Doug's going to come back.
Oh, I think he needs to be here for the
Might be a while. Okay. Good evening and welcome. I'd like to begin by calling this regular council meeting of Wednesday, October 4th, 2017 to order. It's 3 minutes after 7 according to the video screen. And the first item, of course, after the call to order and a reference of the declaration of conflict of interest should any councillors find themselves in such a conflict, to declare that and let the other councillors know and recuse yourselves from any discussion. And then we move to the adoption of the agenda. And I look for a motion to adopt. Councillor Seegers, Councillor Inkster. And are there any additions or deletions to the circulated agenda? Any from council? No late items. That's great. All those in favor? And that's carried. We now have the agenda. We'll move to the very first item, there being no one appointment, a delegation, Mr. Parfitt, regarding the Clayton family lands. So please come forward, hit the mic button, introduce yourself. We'll get the ball and the show going.
I'm Ray Parfitt, development consultant with Clayton Family Lands. Your Worship and Council, the purpose of this delegation is to address a condition of third reading of Trail Bay Estate zoning bylaw amendments 25-269, the subdivision of Phase 2A, and 25-278 CD37, Westbrook Assisted Living Facility, and to seek Council support in relaxing this condition. At the September 6th regular Council meeting, Council passed a motion giving the above referenced bylaws third reading. A condition of adoption of these bylaws includes dedication of a portion of the Neptune Connector, also known as Tyler Road. It's the position of the Clayton family lands that this condition is premature and imposes a hardship on both these developments. Furthermore, we submit that a road dedication is more rightfully a condition of subdivision approval rather than zoning. At the September 6th Council meeting, staff referred to Tyler Road as part of the Neptune Connector interim connector as identified in the OCP 2010. However, the OCP also states that this wouldn't be necessary until 2024. To date, the connector is very conceptual, as was illustrated at the September 6th meeting by staff. There's been no study to identify the alignment of the Neptune Connector, including future connections with Derby Road, Clayton Way, or Trail Avenue, or how the present dedications by developers would connect to this future road alignment. The March 29, 2017 Binney report recommends that Shorncliffe Highway 101 intersection be improved with right turn, left turn lanes to accommodate traffic from the subject developments in the catchment area, Spaney, Clayton Family Lands, Swarney, Lumber. Signalized intersection is not required until year 2035 based on projected traffic volumes. The March Binney report identifies Tyler Road as not being required to be constructed until the year 2035. The July Binney report, which came after a peer review, drops the requirement for Tyler Road, identifying this as a requirement sometime after 2035. There doesn't appear to be any justification for the dedication of Tyler Road at this juncture. The CTS traffic impact study for Lot 7, Phase 2A subdivision and the assisted living facility shows that the traffic volumes from Lot 7 and Phase 2A and Westbrook can be readily accommodated by the Cowrie Street Shorncliffe network, including intersection capacity. CTS study shows that approximately 80% of the traffic on this network is generated by the high school and other background traffic. There's no appurtenance between Phase 2A and Westbrook and the Tyler Road dedication. Tyler Road is approximately 190 meters from the Westbrook facility, 150 meters from the closest lot in the Phase 2A subdivision. Tyler Road is not required to mitigate traffic impacts from these two developments. Our position has always been this dedication would be more appropriately come with Trail Bay Estate subdivisions 2B and 2E, preferably 2E, the latter one. And this is really the plan that had gone before council sometime earlier last summer for the rezoning of this. And there's Tyler Road, and these are the various phases. Here's the assisted living facility, and here's the Phase 2A subdivision here. So it really falls in with these latter subdivisions in our opinion. In conclusion, we request that council remove the Tyler Road dedication as a requirement of the zoning bylaw amendments for Phase 2A and Westbrook. Clayton Family Lands is willing to offer a letter of undertaking agreeing to dedicate Tyler Road as part of Phases 2B to 2E. Alternately, the Clayton Family Lands is prepared to register a restrictive covenant, a 219 covenant on title specifying that Tyler Road dedication be taken as a condition of the approval of Phases 2B to 2E. Clayton Family Lands is prepared to discuss these options with the Development Services staff. Furthermore, it's respectively suggested that the staff undertake an engineering analysis of the Neptune connector, including locations of intersections in the West Sechelt subdivisions and connections to Trail Avenue in the east. And that concludes our delegation, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. Any clarifications needed by councillors? I thought it's quite straightforward. We did discuss it, as you say, at council in September 6th. So the response will probably come through a planning committee where there can be more discussion and ensure that staff gives it a sober second look, and committee will then have a second look at our original decision. And if anything comes through planning committee, it'll come back here.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, sorry, Councillor Mueller.
Yeah, it's a question directed to staff. If there was any relaxation or change of that as a requirement of adoption, would that trigger another public hearing?
I believe that because there's no change in density, it would be considered to be a minor condition that could be varied. Looking to Joanne Frank here because she's the corporate officer. And there's no change in density, no change in form.
Yeah. Subject to having the opportunity to research this further, but at first blush, if there's no change in use or density proposed, there shouldn't be a need for a public hearing unless this change caused council to want some additional information of whatever sort, because if it became additional information that would be germane to the general public, there could be a reason to have another public hearing.
Okay, that's just, I think, something that we should probably
well,
get ironed out before it comes back to planning.
That's exactly why the committee should have the discussion, and why you can't make these decisions on the cuff. We need to go back and have it considered, and it may have been one of the calculations of other factors on the subdivision, so we want to look at all of that, and you can do that in a committee. Councillor Seegers.
Thank you. We'll actually need to look at that once we get to the regular council minutes for the meeting, because it's actually in these minutes.
Of the planning, of our
Of
minutes.
our regular council meeting, last one.
But if those minutes are correct, we can still adopt them.
Okay, thanks.
Doesn't mean the decision can't be rescinded or changed at some later date. And when we get there, you can remind us to make sure that we understand what that is. Thank you very much, Mr. Barfoot. Moving to item 5.1, minutes of the 3 p.m. regular council meeting, a motion to receive and adopt. Thank you, Councillor Seegers and Councillor Lutz. All those in favor? And that's carried. Moving to the minutes of the 7 p.m. regular council meeting of September 6th, 2017. First, a motion to receive. Councillor Shanks, Councillor Wright. Now, any errors or omissions or considerations? And Councillor Seegers, maybe remind us of what you're thinking here.
Okay, so let's deal with that one first. I don't have page numbers on here, so I'm going to be looking at the page numbers at the top. Page 8 of 16.
And resolution number?
Resolution number 2017-09B-17.
Okay. And we do have, that's where we did make the reading it prior. The road dedication be secured.
The wording on this one may not be an issue because it just says the road dedication within the subject property. If there isn't any within this subject property, then there will be nothing to be dedicated.
Yeah, I think that if the minutes are accurate to what we moved that night, then we draw that to our attention, but we don't have to change anything or worry about deleting it. And you had some other errors?
Yes, the other one on the next page, bottom of page 9 of 10. That one specifically identifies a piece of property.
Yep. I still think that there's no particular reason to change the minutes if the minutes reflect the position at the time, and we will give it a second look at committee long before we move to that actual final adoption.
Okay.
Okay.
So then errors.
Yes.
On the first page, bottom, last sentence. And I don't have page numbers again, so it's they mayor, it'd just be the mayor. It's very simple.
We're turning that into a collective plural,
Yes.
so you can all participate. The load's getting a little heavy for one mayor.
Okay, that's
Sorry.
it in these. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other errors or omissions? Then I would look for a motion to adopt the minutes as presented. Councillor Inkster and Seegers, all those in favor? That's carried. Any business arising from the minutes of those council meetings? Okay. That will come. So moving then to minutes of committee meeting minutes. First, we'll start with minutes of the Committee of the Whole, which are item 7.1, pages 23 to 26. Motion to receive and adopt. Councillor Shanks, Councillor Lutz. Any errors or omissions? All those in favor? And I will come back to business arising when we're finished all of the committee meetings, committee reports. Actually, maybe I should do that now. Is there any business arising from councillors? If not, I do have a first response coming from that council committee of the whole, which I'd like to put into the record. And it's a first response to the committee of the whole meeting, and there will be a staff report coming later that has more detail to this. But the District of Sechelt approach to the issue of sinkholes at Concordia Sea-Watch has always... Well, then we'll try and adjust the back speakers because I can't speak any louder. Thank you, and thank you for letting us know, because usually we check that in the first couple of minutes, and whenever we open the back, we have to make sure those speakers are there. So this is a first response to the Committee of Whole meeting, and there will be a further report coming that staff is working on, which will come later. I wanted to take a few minutes to set out the District of Sechelt's approach to this issue and what we've been doing, because it wasn't necessarily clear to the community, and it didn't have an opportunity during the Committee of the Whole meeting. So the District of Sechelt approach to the issue of sinkholes at Concordia Sea-Watch has always had 4 elements. It has been evidence-based, with decisions made within a policy context, for example, the Financial Sustainability Plan of 2017, the McElhaney Road Report of 2015, policies on asset management, and our standard practices for development applications and the review and approval of those applications. Second, District of Sechelt has encouraged an omnibus resolution as the best option for residents of the development. Third, District of Sechelt has continued monitoring and assessment of the situation, in particular monitoring of the groundwater levels and any evidence of continuing impact on roads and public infrastructure. And fourth, District of Sechelt has encouraged the residents to seek their own professional advice. And I'd like to speak to each of these elements of our approach in more detail. Our approach to this issue since February 1st, 2015 has been measured and considered. The district moved immediately, with permission of the owners of Lot 21, to stabilize the sinkhole manifesting on private property. Since that time, the district has commissioned various geotechnical reports to examine the conditions surrounding the 2015 sinkhole and to consider measures that may mitigate existing risks and provide long-term certainty. This council has released all of those reports and the results of ongoing assessments to the residents, so they remain as informed as members of council. This approach was taken for two reasons. First, open and transparent government is a key value adopted by this council in our strategic plan. Second, it is expected, perhaps naively, that reasonable people reading and sharing the same information will reach similar conclusions regarding the situation at hand. Although this outcome has not been reached in this situation, the District of Sechelt remains committed to open and transparent decision-making. Since 2015, the District of Sechelt has expressly encouraged residents to work together to reach a collective omnibus solution that is agreeable and fair to all. We have recently learned that this approach was not working. This was confirmed by residents during the Committee of the Whole meeting in September, who spoke of their frustration with this approach. We understand now that the interests and preferred outcomes of the residents are currently too diverse to support a shared approach to resolving this situation. It is also clear from continuing consideration of this situation that the factual foundation informing the perspectives of residents may vary considerably. Nevertheless, it remains the opinion of Council that a collective, agreed-upon outcome provides the best options for residents. In my view, only if we have all those with claims and grievances in the same room as all of those whom are said to be responsible in some way, including Concordia, its geotechnical engineers, and others who are named in the ongoing litigation, is there any chance a fair and balanced resolution will be reached. The District of Sechelt will continue to support this option with those resources that are prudently and reasonably available. The third element of the District of Sechelt's approach to the sinkholes in the Concordia Sea Watch development has been a vigilant and scheduled observation of the situation. We have been assisted greatly by the residents who, of course, are immediately available and have notified us when new circumstances emerge or work on neighboring properties may require investigation. Groundwater levels are monitored through piezometers and the results shared with the public. Regular photographs and regular measurements of surface conditions where sinkholes have manifest provide data that may help us understand the dynamics of this site. The district has also engaged geotechnical engineers to examine subsurface conditions under public roads and right-of-ways. Finally, we have encouraged residents to seek their own professional advice as to the remedies that may be available to them. It has become apparent over time that there may be some differences with respect to the impact of the movement of groundwater on different properties. The district has given the residents the reports it has received from Thurber, as these relate to the road and public property, but these do not assess the situation on private property. In fact, requests to conduct assessments on some private properties were expressly denied. Nevertheless, a review of available reports would suggest that some residents in particular should conduct their own investigations, and we would continue to encourage everyone to seek independent professional advice. There are a few things we have learned from reports and professional advice that have guided and informed and continue to guide and to inform council deliberations. First, in our view, it is best to consider this an integrated site. The geotechnical conditions do not conform to the grid of lot lines surveyed at time of subdivision. Individual lots, private land and public land, are all linked by similar subsurface conditions. Groundwater flows under private property and under public property. A sinkhole that manifests in one area, such as Lot 21 in February 2015, will impact other public and private properties. A shift in groundwater on Lot 3, such as occurred in 2012, will impact other private lots and public roads. We are all in this together. Second, in our reading of the reports by professional engineers, and this observation is directly opposed to a continuing theme in the presentation at the Committee of the Whole. In our reading of the reports by professional engineers, it is the land, or more correctly, it is the groundwater. Groundwater flowing through the particular geological structures found on this site. Groundwater is related to sinkholes, and sinkholes will impact infrastructure, private and public infrastructure. This triad is clearly stated in report after report after report. Groundwater, sinkholes, impacted infrastructure. In the hundreds of pages of reports we have all read, this sequence and this triad is never reversed. No one with professional accountability has argued that infrastructure creates sinkholes or that sinkholes cause elevated groundwater. This second observation leads the District of Sechelt to be very cautious regarding and skeptical of recommendations that suggest that repairs to roads or infrastructure will eliminate sinkholes or somehow change the geotechnical subsurface realities in the Concordia Sea-Watch development. We will consider those suggestions, but only in the context of existing policy frameworks and prudent financial planning. I would like at this time to respond to one specific factual issue that arose repeatedly during the committee meeting. I do this as it illustrates a number of issues we are facing and points to both the complexity of the material that has been shared over the past 5 years and to the importance of taking due care and consideration in this matter. During the Committee of the Whole meeting, at least 3 residents called attention to reports by Thurber Engineering, one prepared in 2012 and one prepared in 2013. It was claimed that the District of Sechelt did not disclose these reports in a timely manner. These reports appear quite central to the issue, as the first was commissioned after the first post-development sinkhole, and residents argue that access to the reports may have influenced their decisions regarding subsequent purchases of property in the development. The first report in question was commissioned by the District of Sechelt immediately after the sinkhole on Sea-Watch Lane emerged on June 1st, 2012. It was completed in late July of 2012. It was titled Thurber Report, The Shores Subdivision, Phase 1 Geotechnical Assessment. Despite claims to the contrary, this report was released to the residents, to the public, and posted on the District of Sechelt website. A resolution to release the report and waive solicitor's client privilege over the report was passed by Council on August 3rd, 2012. The report was first released directly to the residents at the time, to the developer, Concordia Sea-Watch, and legal counsel for the developer. It was posted to the District of Sechelt website shortly thereafter. We have an email dated August 7th, 2012, 11:42 a.m., quote, on behalf of the Sea-Watch community, unquote, thanking the district and Mayor Henderson for providing an advance copy of this report. That it was widely available is evident from local media reports and from direct references and links on a third-party blog on Sunshine Coast Real Estate. Some of you may be familiar with the website blog vancouverpeak.com. The second report was Thurber's final summary report from this phase of their work and was dated April 5th, 2013. The report was titled The Shores, Phase 1 Subdivision Ground Investigation and Geotechnical Assessment. Again, a council resolution to release this report to residents was passed on April 24th, 2013, and was addressed as item 12.2, number 12.2, during the regular council meeting of May 1st, 2013. We also have an email from the district to residents dated April 25th, 2013, attaching a copy of the report, a copy of a letter dated April 30th, 2013 from our legal counsel to the legal counsel for Concordia attaching the report, and a response from Concordia's legal counsel dated May 3rd, 2013, acknowledging receipt. The letter from Concordia's legal counsel states that the report would be drawn to the attention to the principals of Concordia and to Golder Engineering. Accordingly, claims that these reports were withheld or unavailable to residents appear to be inaccurate in respect of both reports, and we've been able to confirm this in each case through several documents, including correspondence with individuals who were residents of the subdivision at the time. Of course, we do not know who used the availability of the report or those reports released prior to or subsequent to August 2012 to inform themselves of the geotechnical realities of this development. However, we do know that this report was provided directly to residents at the time and to the developer. We do not know if anyone purchasing Concordia properties after August 7th, 2012 were made aware of this report by realtors or through their personal due diligence. We can be confident in knowing that if anyone purchased directly from the developer, Concordia Sea-Watch knew exactly what they were selling. Finally, I must say a few words about the tone of the engagement over the past couple of weeks. Considering the differing views and the personal impact on the lives of individuals and their families, it has been, to use the Canadian colloquialism, not bad. We all understand the frustration that will emerge when others do not agree with our conclusions. It is especially important for Council and the District of Sechelt staff to avoid negative reaction to differing views and to remain open to new understandings that may lead in new directions. Residents can help us in 2 ways. First, by way of analogy, Consider the recent engagement between the President of the United States of America and the President of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. No one thinks for a moment that the mutual bluster, threats, and insults the world has witnessed will lead to a better mutual understanding or reduce the risk of war. The insults shift our focus from the issues at hand and increase the odds of a quick negative response rather than carefully considered action. Similarly, some of the language used in recent weeks, the language of accusation, crosses the line of what should be acceptable in a mature, civil discussion. Subjected to insults, council and staff are more likely to leave the meeting focused on the insults than on reconsidering the issue from a new perspective. Second, the barrage of questions and declarations used to badger council and staff are deeply counterproductive. Counterproductive, that is, if there remains any slim interest in a free and open dialogue. They appear to be a strategy meant to produce a gotcha moment, whereby some slip of the tongue or some hesitant attempt to respond, the District of Sechelt's approach to the issue will collapse and the world will be remade in the hopes of the interrogators. The opposite result is more likely. With questions aimed to find fault and questions built upon contested declarations of truth, council and staff will simply not respond. We cannot put the community at risk, and we will not. Staff are working on a report to council that will respond as best we can to what was presented at the Committee of the Whole. We are hoping that that will be available very early in November. It is most likely to be presented at a regular council meeting. Thank you for allowing me to respond. We can move to item 7.2, which are the minutes of the Planning and Community Development meeting of Wednesday, September 20th. First, a motion to receive. Thank you, Councillor Lutz. Councillor Seegers. Are there any errors or omissions or any of the recommendations that would like to be pulled? Councillor Seegers.
Thank you. On page 3 of 7 of these minutes, under recommendation number 5, just the zoning of the lot at Dusty Road. Instead of L7, it should be I7.
Thank you for that correction. It's an industrial zone, I7. It is Lot L, but it's not L7. Any other minor errors or any recommendations that people would like to pull for further discussion? Seeing none, I would look for a motion for council to adopt recommendations 3, which are the Advisory Planning Committee, through to 10, which is the Development Application Chart. Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Seegers, second. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. Those are adopted. Item 7.3 are the minutes of the Finance, Culture, and Economic Development Committee meeting of Wednesday, September 13. First, a motion to receive. Councillor Inkster, Councillor Lutz, seconding. And any errors or omissions in those minutes? Councillor Seegers.
Thank you. Small one on the bottom of page 3 of 6. Last bullet. Probably no significant issues have been noted.
And I hope also that so significant issues have been noted. Yes, no. And that's on the bottom of page 35 of our agenda. And Councillor Wright.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. Also on page 35, under 3.2, under the discussion portion, these are the items that were brought to our attention. I don't see anything in there about opening up the contract, and I don't see anything in there about the 49% increase that the library would like us to look at for 2018.
Yes, I think there probably should be a mention of opening the contract, and that would not necessarily be in the discussion, but in the first part of the presentation, because that was a key part of the presentation that the librarian made, because it wasn't simply to look for funding in the next 5-year contract, but to open it up before the close. And Councillor Wright notes that he would like some references to the increases that were a key part of the discussion.
Thank you.
Any other? Are there any of those recommendations that need to be pulled for further discussion? Seeing none, I would look for a motion to adopt recommendations 3, which is the Sechelt Arts Festival Progress Report, through to recommendation 8, waiver on the charges for Sunshine Coast Search and Rescue. Motion to adopt 3 through to 9. Thank you, Councillor Seegers and Councillor Wright. All those in favor? That's carried. No opposition. And 7.4, minutes of the Public Works, Parks and Environment Committee. First, a motion to receive of Councillor Seegers and Lutz, and looking for errors or omissions or recommendations that need to be pulled prior to adoption. Seeing none, I will look for a motion to adopt recommendation 3, which is the activity report, through to recommendation 8, Wakefield Road repair. Councillor Wright moves, and seconded by Councillor Lutz. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. I'm always happy when committee reports come forward and the discussion has been complete enough that council can simply adopt them. We move then to the first major business item, which is the 2018 permissive tax exemptions. First, a motion to receive. Councillor Wright and Councillor Seegers. All those in favor? And I'll turn to the Director of Corporate and Financial Services to remind us why we give permissive property tax exemptions and what the total cost of that tax is to others.
Thank you, Your Worship. The community charter automatically exempts certain properties, places of worship, and those the church themselves exempt from property taxes. But Section 224 of the community charter also provides an ability for council to exempt certain properties from taxes, those that provide church services, places of worship, community services, recreational facilities, and some municipal property that's used for other services. So, as in prior years, we're bringing forward a list of the same properties that applied for exemptions last year, or the same properties that are applying for this year. So there's been no changes in the applications or the requests, but by October 31st, council has to approve a bylaw to exempt these properties specifically for the year. The cost for the district, municipal taxes that would be exempted is $216,617, and the total taxes exempted, that would include the other government taxes, is $527,771. And just to note, on page 45 of the report, last year there was a question about how much was going towards social housing, so we decided to include that into this report. So for your information, it's $29,909 exempted for social housing, and $70,698 would be the total for all taxes, including the municipal portion.
Thank you very much for that. Can I ask a quick question? You may not have it at your fingertips, but given the general increase in assessed values, is the property tax exemption total or aggregate changing much year to year? Or can you remember what it might have been in the previous year? No, we can do that at the next committee, though. It's just a brand new question. I didn't thought of it. And Councillor Seegers.
Thank you. On Schedule A, third item down, talks about Holy Family Roman Catholic Church, and it indicates in the comments that there's a residence in there. I believe according to the permissive tax bylaw, we do not include the residence. So I'm wondering if that's been deleted.
Yes, Your Worship, it has. The rectory, this is for the Catholic Church, so the rectory, they use a portion of it for children's Bible studies, but $290,700 is fully taxed as the residential portion.
All right, then also last year, Sunshine Coast Association for Community Living indicated that some of their property on Mermaid, I believe, was being leased out. Have we followed up on that with them this year?
Yes, Your Worship, about 50% of their property is deemed taxable.
Thank you. And then it also indicates on Schedule B, the application for SPCA, that a portion of the property is sublet. Is that commercially leased out? Is that taken into account?
Page 55 of our agenda. And
Yes, that's been actually appears that one's fully taxable, as far as I can tell.
Okay.
or exempt, sorry.
So it must be a very small portion that's leased out, but some has been.
Yes, okay, I think that's
Okay.
all my questions. Thank you.
And Councillor Wright?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question. If, for argument's sake, if a developer was to buy a church, but the church remained as a church on a lease basis, what then, are they still exempt?
Yes, Your Worship, but it's based on the usage of the property. So if they have a lease for the exempt purpose, then it would remain exempt. It's no different than these other ones where community living, where it's a use for a taxable purpose, it's no longer exempt, it works the opposite way.
Okay, thank you.
And you might look at the proportion of use, if it was 100% or 50%. So if it was a commercial mall where they had a church on Sunday mornings, you might allow a portion. Is that how it would work?
Essentially, we would estimate the commercial portion versus the exempt portion.
I know it doesn't happen in Sechelt, but I think in the lower mainland, Fraser Valley, there's a number of churches and commercial spaces, theaters and things.
And what it is in reference to, Your Worship, is the Legion. In fact, the building has been sold and is now owned by another business in town. And it still remains as a Legion, and I just wanted to know if they are in fact, are still going to remain tax exempt. Thank you.
It's,
And Your Worship, oh, sorry, I can't let you know, last year's exemption municipal portion was $203,863. So it's
on a marginal increase, 15,000. It's important to keep track of this because it is their tax expenditures if they're not direct financial expenditures. So looking back then, sorry, I lost my page here. The recommendation is that the 2018 property tax exemption bylaw number 561 be given 3 readings. Councillor Seegers moves that after questions, and Councillor Mueller seconds it. All those in favor? That's carried. Then and is the bylaw here? Attachment 4. Yep. We always like to make sure we have it on our screens or in front of us because every once in a while there's something that doesn't work. So I'd like to have somebody move first reading of District of Sechelt 2018 Property Tax Exemption Bylaw number 561-2017, a bylaw for the purposes of exempting certain lands and improvements from municipal property taxation for the 2018 taxation year. Councillor Mueller, Councillor Lutz, and all those in favor. That's carried. And second reading of bylaw number 561-2017 is put forward by Councillor Wright and Councillor Inkster. All those in favor? That's carried. And we can do 3 readings tonight. So I'll look for third reading to be put forward by Councillor Seegers, seconded by Councillor Lutz, and all those in favor. And that's carried as well. Thank you. Moving to item 8.2A, which is not on our agenda, but it is on my sheet, which is the request for decision regarding bylaw number 25. So first, the recommendation that it be received, Councillor Seegers, Councillor Lutz, and that's on page 61 of our agenda.
At this point, do we need to amend the agenda to amend that number that is in the public agenda?
We've already adopted the agenda, but we could note that there's an incorrect numbering on the order paper.
Yeah,
it should be numbered as
8.2
8.3 or,
8.2 is what it should be.
yes, yeah.
Okay.
The bylaw, the agenda's been adopted already, but we'll note it.
I think we
for
should
the
note
record.
that, just so we don't get as confused as I did.
And we can correct it on the webpage too, our copy on the webpage.
Thanks for that. So and it's for adoption. Do you want to speak to it, or is it pretty straightforward? Okay. Mr. Stewart, as
Thank you.
Director of Planning.
Thank you, Your Worship. So on November 16th, 2016, Council took this zoning bylaw amendment 25-275 to 3 readings. Since that time, direct disposal has met all the conditions of the bylaw, and so it's now appropriate to adopt the bylaw. This bylaw, what it does is it changes the zoning, it changes the lot lines to create 3 lots. They were poorly designed at the time, and it also brings it into conforming with the current use. So it was residential, it's now a R2, and it's now moved into an industrial use, which is what it's actually being used for at this time.
Thank you, and we'll do this in 2 steps. If any discussion or clarification from the director? And we'll do this in 2 steps. First, the recommendation, which is on the screen and before us. Somebody to move the second recommendation. Thank you, Councillor Seegers, Councillor Mueller. All those in favor? And then we will move to the bylaw itself, and I'll look for somebody to move final adoption of bylaw number 25-275, 2016, direct disposal, which is a bylaw to amend District of Sechelt zoning bylaw number 25, 1987, soon to be revised, by rezoning 3 properties in the East Porpoise Bay neighborhood from RR2 and Industrial 3, I3 to I3 and I6. Final adoption was moved by Councillor Seegers and Councillor Wright. All those in favor? It's carried, and that business is completed. New business, I see none on the agenda. Business items, I see none on the agenda, so we move to reports from councillors. And I'll start again on the right of the audience, left of the table, Councillor Inkster, because then we can circle back to him for the SCRD report. But we'll start with the council report.
Thank you. It's been not a lot necessarily happening locally other than a meeting last evening in which it was good to hear from a number of people interested in the affordable housing temporary proposal for Trail Avenue. It's good to hear a number of different opinions from a number of community members as well as the proponents. I think Rain City was there, who will be operating the facility, as well as BC Housing, who are very actively pursuing a solution for homelessness on the Sunshine Coast. So that was a good meeting to go to. I know that there was a number of other council members there to listen to what was being said. So it was some good information to take away about where some of our community members are on the issue, which is we should really be considering, and it's really important for our community to find a solution to that issue. Speaking to that, the UBCM last week was where a number of us were at. That was one of the things that I actually did because we didn't have items on the resolutions table, although other than the regional district one, which there was strong support for, I was involved in some other pieces to the convention, including speaking to, if I could, members of the organizations that we sometimes come in contact with, which includes BC Housing, and I had a lengthy conversation with a couple of the people that were then there last night as part of the presenting group, and talked to them about the issues that we're facing, but also to look at any other affordable housing solutions that they may have for the Sunshine Coast and for Sechelt, to encourage them to consider us for any help. We do know that the new election of the new provincial government, which a number of people were happy about and lauded at the UBCM, and their commitment to a number of units, specifically in the Lower Mainland, may mean that they'll step into our area and help us with some of our issues that we are dealing with on a daily basis. And I also just wanted to mention that I will touch on some of the other meetings that we had at the regional district had at the UBCM in later reports. But it was good to also, too, on the affordable housing one, to hook somebody up locally who may have a piece of land up with BC Housing to see if they can begin discussions. Because I think that's the big issue is BC Housing always says, where's the land available to us to look at putting some funding into, because they don't have land. So hopefully people hear that and step up for that. Otherwise, it was a busy number of days and very tiring, and I'll spend a little more time on the regional district portion. Thanks.
Thank you for that report. And Councillor Wright?
Thank you, Worship. Seems like a long time since we gave a last council report. And as I look back through my calendar, I realized that I'd gone to 2 open houses for Spectrum of Care, attended a finance committee, attended Davis Bay Community Association, attended the Advisory Planning Commission, Public Works Committee for the District of Sechelt, Planning Committee for the District of Sechelt. Also went to the SCRD Infrastructure Committee meeting. I didn't go to UBCM this year, but I did attend the annual general meeting for the Municipal Insurance Association. Attended the Seniors Planning Table fall meeting, went to the BC Housing meeting that was on last night, attended a committee of the whole, and on a personal note, I helped my wife celebrate another birthday. And thank you very much.
Thank you,
Concludes my
Councillor.
report.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. And Councillor Seegers.
Thank you. There's a lot of stuff once I sat down and started putting a list
September
together.
6th was quite a while ago.
That's right. I double checked to make sure that, yes, that's when we had the last meeting. I attended the open house in the town hall on the Spectrum of Care. As you know, I was away for a week. I went out to Calgary and spent some time with my children and grandchildren. That was ringette and hockey and all those kinds of things. Grocery shopping and clothes shopping with my granddaughter. Fun. Anyway, on the 20th, it was the Committee of the Whole with Sea-Watch. I did attend UBCM. For those of you who look at the agenda, it might seem like not a lot happens. We're busy in sessions from 7:30 in the morning. The first session starts at 7:30, and then we go through till about 8:30 or 9 every night. So I left Thursday and came back, and I'd planned on doing that. So the sessions that I attended 2 sessions on the legalization of cannabis in BC. In July 2018, it will become legal. The first session had Vancouver, Victoria, Nelson, a few who are dealing with it right now, who already have policies and bylaws and things in place. So they indicated what their concerns and learnings and things were from that. The second session, which other councillors were at, was with the provincial government, looking at giving us where they're at with that. So I have some information that I'll be writing up, be providing to the rest of council for those who weren't there and to staff, because there are things that we need to consider in going forward. I attended a session on preparing for the 2018 general and local elections because they were talking about election financing rules that are going to be changing. They're anticipating that the rules that are in place for the provincial election will also be put in place for the municipal election, and the limits on spending will be set in April for both candidates and third-party advertising. I attended the mid-sized community session, again along with other councillors. It was focusing on effective partnerships for economic development. What else? Another session, I won't mention all of them, but this was another one. I think we split up and attended different sessions. What happens each year at UBCM is the various ministers get together in separate rooms, and then we as councillors can go and address them, ask questions. Given that this cabinet has only been in a short while, they were looking for feedback from various communities. So I attended the session on infrastructure and economic development. It had Carol James, the Minister of Finance and Deputy Premier, Claire Trevina, the Transportation Minister. She also has BC Ferries, and Selena Robinson, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Harry Baines from Labour, and Lisa Baer from Tourism, Arts and Culture, and she also does the creative sector. A lot of focus on ferries and roads, etc. One of the things that I then brought forward, I heard what everybody else said, was something that was expressed to me by somebody in our community when they said that there's a crisis in our food service industry. As some of you know, we have restaurants here who are having a lot of trouble getting staff. It's starting to, they're getting burnout. There was a sign posted on Facebook by one of the restaurants down in Gibson's where they closed for 2 days for mental health days for their workers. So they've actually requested a meeting, but they said we can't have it on Monday or Tuesday night because if it's NFL or NHL, we haven't got staff. We can't we have to have staff here. So it is a crisis. I brought it up to them. They're going to look at it because it impacts transportation and housing and all of those kinds of things. The last session I attended was Making BC Regional Airport Successful. It was quite interesting. Again, I'll write up what was brought forward. The mayor from Quesnel was one of the presenters, and he looked at it from a little unique perspective. He said, what if we didn't have an airport? What would we miss out on? Then there was the manager who just retired from the Kamloops Airport. He talked about the things that airports bring. So they talked about both sides, what works, what doesn't work. So there's, again, a lot of learning there. And then at the trade show, I picked up a few things I'm going to be passing on to staff. Probably one of the really important things that takes place at UBCM is the networking. So it was nice. It was really nice to network with colleagues from around the province, but I really enjoyed actually spending time with some of our SIB counselors. Three of them attended, and so we actually got some time to spend together and get to know each other. And then I attended last night the BC Housing Public Engagement session regarding the homeless shelter. So that's the last few weeks.
Thank you for that report, and I appreciate the written comments from those various workshops and seminars we have at UBCM. It's one way to bring back things from the conference rather than just verbal reports. Councillor Mueller.
Yes, thank you. Since our last meeting and my last report, I've been settling into my role as the new chair of planning. It's something that I take very seriously, but I think for this report, I'll mostly focus on UBCM because that was the bulk of the work over the past few weeks. So usually for me, UBCM is a great time to reflect on what's transpired in the year and my role as a councillor and how this is all working, talk with other councillors and get into some workshops. So definitely did a lot of that. Connected with a lot of some of the other younger councillors from around BC and getting an idea of some of the challenges they're facing, which are very similar to mine. It's one of the things that I noticed at this year's UBCM was just seeing the tracking of things that have been raised at previous AVICCs and UBCMs that are now following through and seeing some of that great work come to fruition. One of the things that I've been most focused on is the forestry workshops that have been happening there. So this has kind of been a collaborative effort between the provincial government, industry, and communities to both provide information and seek community input. And I've been attending because of our community forest and just getting an idea of what that is going on. So there's going to be more of that in the future, but this was a follow-up from last year. Really good discussion. I attended as well the legalization of non-medicinal marijuana with Councillor Seegers, and I think that the important thing to note there is that there is now a BC-wide survey that is open for submissions. So if anybody wants to submit their views on that, you got to go to the BC website, and that's currently open now. I think it's open for another month, I believe. Another thing that, so one of the big things that happened last year, actually there was a bunch of newspaper articles written about it was as I was walking into the main plenary forum, there was actually a young woman there from Sechelt that was over there advocating for a resolution on socially responsible investing, specifically related to fossil fuels and the Municipal Finance Authority. So it was probably one of my best times at the mic at UBCM. I got to the mic and I got the last word in a debate between the UBCM president and the plenary on whether or not Municipal Finance Authority funds should be allowed to do socially responsible investing, such as divestment from fossil fuels. That vote passed narrowly, and so UBCM basically this year they started a forum to look into how that would work, and so there was a forum on that, which I think provided some interesting input. So that was good to see. Also, I managed to go again to the Lidstone Invitational Hockey Game, which is a little bit of fun, but it's councillors and mayors from around BC. It's hosted by Don Lidstone, an associates legal firm, and it's just a good time. And but I think the most important thing that I wanted to really state is really the very different feeling coming from the new government that was totally evident throughout the entire conference. In 2013, when I first got into politics in a big way, I went and visited the legislature and saw the kind of partisan hackery that was really the focus of that House, and it seemed completely dysfunctional to me. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. MLAs shouting down and banging their tables to prevent others from speaking, things that really didn't befit to me the real duty of government to the people of BC, and to really look after the types of interests that government house has to look after. This year, now we're in a minority government position, which requires a lot more cooperation between the parties. I really got the feeling that partisanship wasn't there in quite the same way. The new government has essentially struck numerous committees that are totally balanced between the Liberals, the NDP, and the Greens, which is very interesting to see. Also in the main keynote speech, the new Premier, John Horgan, made a point of pointing out all the Liberals and the Liberal caucus and the Green caucus and the NDP caucus equally and evenly, something that I've not seen before. To me, it really showed signs of a strong leadership and a new way of thinking in BC. So I wanted to note that.
Thank you very much for that report and for the comments on UBCM. And Councillor Lutz.
Thank you. As well as other councillors, I attended the E-Town Hall around the seniors and care situations, committee meetings, the Committee of the Whole with Sea-Watch, and also UBCM I attended from Monday to Friday. Most of the things have been talked about. The part that I always find very interesting at UBCM is the resolutions and the discussions around that. We got through all of the resolutions, in excess of 150. And when you've got that many politicians in the room wanting to speak, that's pretty amazing. I attended the town hall meeting with 5 cabinet ministers, and the subject was health and safety. And there was some very incredible discussion from the ministers and from the people attending the workshop. We got to be very forthright with our questions and were treated so respectfully by the ministers. It was just a true joy to have that interaction. We discussed the interconnections between the ministries, how everything feeds in to the other, from education through homelessness and poverty, and just all the way through to even incarceration. And it just was very interesting to see how they interact with each other around the issues, because they do overlap, just like in our own community. I too found it refreshing and different, this UBCM. The ministers, if they weren't in meetings with communities, were on the floor or in the workshops. They were very accessible to all of us, and that was very refreshing. So I thank the district for sending me. I truly got a lot from it. That's my report.
Thank you, Councillor Lutz. And Councillor Shanks.
I guess my report sort of fails by comparison to what others are talking about, but I did want to let Councillor Muller know that 56 years ago, when I graduated from high school, the legislation was just about the same in terms of, because I was taking Law 91 courses, we got the privilege at that time to go down and watch legislature in action. And it was an eye-opener, as you experienced yourself. I too didn't go to the UBCM this year. I've been on several other occasions. And with another employer that I have, I had some new responsibilities. So I was dealing with those at the time. Probably I'm not going to say the highlight, but the most interesting meeting was that of the Committee of the Whole, where we got to hear from the Sea-Watch people in terms of their concerns and how they addressed council. For the most part, was extremely respectful until just after 8 o'clock, and it seemed to go a bit sideways. But I appreciate the mayor's comments this evening with respect to his perspective and the fact that in a few short weeks, hopefully, we will have a response to many of those questions which were asked that evening coming from our staff. So thank you very much.
Thank you for that report. And for my report, I will, I'll just say it's been as busy as any September we've ever had. And if we were under the old system in 3-year terms, we'd be in the middle of an election right now. I don't know if that would be busier or not, but it's been very, very busy. At UBCM, the one thing I will mention that was a little different than the others is that with Councillor Wright as representatives of the District of Sechelt at the Municipal Insurance Association, we were given with all the others. They're celebrating their 30th anniversary, and this was a plaque made by one of the, that they had made for the 30th anniversary, and we got the artist and engraver to sign it. And they wanted to recognize the importance of MIA over that 30 years and the work that they do for municipalities. And I can assure the community that their reserves are in very good shape, and nothing, absolutely nothing that the District of Sechelt is involved in is moving the dial on those reserves or affecting the normal operations of business. It's a very strong organization and very helpful to municipalities, which is why it was created as a member-driven organization. Like others, I will remark that the provincial government's presence at UBCM was open and easy access. It reminded me that the election was only a few months ago. We'll see how their access is in 2 years. I also noted that the former government members who were there, the Liberals, were also much easier to approach and easier access than when they were in cabinet. So there's lots of changes, and certainly the new cabinet was enthusiastic about meeting people and reveling in the first few months of excitement of being in cabinet. Councillor Lutz found it refreshing and easy because there was more than one cabinet minister that knew her by name and gave her a big hug. So how often does that happen when you're in another city that the cabinet minister comes by? Of course, that was former CUPE president who remembered one of her activists very well. But still, the relationships between this council and the new cabinet are quite positive. We had taken opportunity, Deputy Mayor Lutz and I, to have a sit-down meeting with the health minister, Adrian Dix. That was a positive and, again, very welcoming meeting. We'd gone over to the cabinet offices for that, and I reflected that it had been a while since I'd been in the cabinet offices. And as Adrian said, probably 16 years. I'm not sure why, but I think it is. Actually, I was there once when our former Premier Christie was still education minister. So they're very accessible. They want to make a difference. They want to be seen to make a difference in the first few months, though like any government, they're finding that there's lots of things that they can't do in government that they thought they could do in opposition, and they are constrained by the windows and contracts and decisions that were made before they ended up there. So UBCM was actually a very strong session this time. I will also say and admit that I didn't make any of the 7:30 morning workshops or sessions. So just so you know, it does go on all day, but not all of us can keep that kind of a pace. And for the hockey arena and Lidstone's Invitational, most of the young councillors that are over a certain height and weight get invitations faster than the old guys who nobody wants them on their teams. But Noel has represented us really well, and again, it's about networking and creating new connections with a whole range of people in a different social setting. Item 12. Oh, sorry, SCRD reports. Councillor Inkster, Director Inkster from the SCRD has a report.
Yeah, thank you. It's interesting how much goes on and you forget it. Just wanted to quickly mention the morning sessions, the one important one that I went to, because I think I alluded to it, and a lot of us do. The UBCM, if you do everything, and I try to two or three of the days, you're up at about 6, and you're to sleep at about, if you can get to sleep, about 12 or 1. And you do that for a number of days, and then you sleep well on Friday or Saturday. And one of the early ones that I just wanted to mention that I'd forgotten because there's so much happening later on in the day was the energy breakfast. And it's funny because I was invited by somebody who had an extra ticket, and Regional District had 1 or 2 members going, and that's why I wanted to go as well. And I think only one of them showed up, and the person that invited me that had the extra ticket didn't show up. So, you know, when that happens and you're not sure who's going to be there, you find people that you can talk to and sit with, and I did, and I found you always find some interesting information from people in the energy industry. It's just funny how early it is, as you mentioned, for many, because most of the people that I thought were going to be there didn't show up. In terms of the regional district, I wanted to mention that just before we went, there was an infrastructure meeting that Councillor Wright referred to, and a large portion of that meeting, and I'm assuming that's why Councillor Wright was there, unless he was keeping an eye on my attendance and my snack consumption, I'm not sure, was on the water issue, and I'll mention that later on in the report. I'll reference that, but I'm assuming that's what the discussion was, because as we know, we're at stage 4, and there's not a lot of water around right now, so you know, it's a concern that we have because there's not a lot of water falling from the skies. As many of us know, it's beautiful out there, but every time we get out in the sunshine, locally anyway, we need to realize that there's a water situation. That's why they went to stage 4. I always wonder if years ago we should have built 2 separate sets of pipes for water. And so I'll move on then into the UBCM. The meetings we went to were the health. We were able to the SCRD was able to meet with the health ADMs because it was difficult to get in with the health ministry because of how busy they are with a number of other requests from many municipalities. We met with the health ministry, with the ADMs, to talk about seniors and our hospital. And that's good, because that's something that I mentioned in pre-discussions that we need to be talking about with the provincial government, is about healthcare and our seniors population on the Sunshine Coast, and how a strong proportion it is of our population. So we need to remind the province of that and update the new ministers, because many of them are new to government and they may not know how BC sort of is demographically. And I do know from the one meeting we had with Minister Heyman, I think it's Heyman, right? Councillor Luce, do you know? It's George Heyman, yes.
George,
yeah.
Environment.
That on the environment, that he was really needing to, the Sunshine Coast, and I encouraged him to come over here, was a lot of the information that we were referring to. He's looking to his DM right now, his Deputy Minister, on what's going on in the Sunshine Coast, some of the environmental issues. And the DM was very good and knew what was going on. So he's very interested, though, in some of the issues that the Regional District brought to him. And I just wanted to mention the other thing that we spoke to them about was transportation. We met with the Transportation Minister and the Regional District and the Sunshine Coast and Sechelt. If we go, we always talk about ferries, and thanking them for some of the work that they're doing on the ferries, but also encouraging them to continue with some of the considered issues that I've mentioned previously, which is Horseshoe Bay. How to make changes at Horseshoe Bay in order to have more capacity on and off the ferry, to eventually perhaps lead to hour-by-hour sailing. Because as we've discussed, we all know it's about how to get on and off at Horseshoe Bay, which is limiting that move. And transportation, which is important to many, we also had a big discussion with the Transportation Minister on the maintenance contracts. As many of us know, the maintenance contracts are a concern if there's not enough ice being dealt with, there's not enough snow being cleared, and the shoulders are not being cleared of rocks and stones, not only for vehicles, but also for pedestrians and cyclists. So that's what we wanted to talk to them about. So there's some busy meetings with the provincial government via the SCRD, and that portion of the conference was quite busy each and every one of the middle Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday days. I just wanted to close by reminding Council, I should mention that there's a House on Forum next Friday. that I'm sure that only the SCRD rep from Sechelt goes to, but others have been to it when they've been there, and that's next Friday. And I'm sure anybody who's interested could come if they express interest at the regional district. As I've always said, I'm sure it's welcome to a lot of different people because we border on Howe Sound, and also to the solid waste workshop that the mayor asked some questions about, but I believe the agenda's come out, and one of the things that this council should consider when they see the agenda and consider whether they're going is the solid waste workshop is really important because it's how we move forward as we talk about what we will do with our landfill in the next 8 to 12 years, which is when they're talking about it no longer being available to us. So that's why I encourage them to let our council know that could be a workshop on it, and there is now, because that's how long we have, 8 to 12 years, and we have to start looking at alternative disposal methods or recycling or reusing methods in order to lengthen the lifespan maybe to 12 or 13 years, but it looks like it's about 10. I remember being there in 2008-9, and we thought we had 20 years. Now we have about 10 for our landfill. What do you do with your garbage after that? Thank you.
Thank you very much for those reports. And we'll move on then to items for information release, item 12.1, and it's do we need a resolution for this, or is it just public information? Resolution to, yep, resolution to release from closed meeting the recommendation on page 65 of the agenda. Councillor Seegers, Councillor Lutz, all those in favor, and that's to do with a cost of living wage increase for non-unionized staff. And 12.2 is Sechelt visitor statistics, a motion to receive for information. Councillor Wright, Councillor Seegers, all those in favor. And any comments on this item at the moment? Okay, for information. And that moves us then to the RCMP statistics. August 2017, again, receipt for information, motion to receive. Councillor Lutz, Councillor Wright, all those in favor. And any comments? Thank you, that's carried. And any comments on the RCMP detachment report? Total calls for service are down in our area and up in next door on Bandlands in town of Gibsons, but we're way up on crimes against persons. Fewer calls, but obviously more serious. Any other comments? Thank you for that. Then we'll move to council correspondence. First, a motion to receive, Councillor Seegers and Councillor Lutz. And all those in favor? And we need to at least pull out item 4. And if there's other items to pull out for information, I'll ask those first. But the 4th one, and we had let this slip, it was received on the day of our last council meeting regarding a time capsule for the Sunshine Coast. So the SCRD is asking us if we would consider something that we could contribute to that, and coming forward to council tonight for suggestions or recommendations. I will say that when I saw that the town of Gibsons was going to donate a bottle of their aquifer water, I thought, not facetiously, but partly, that we should donate a corresponding amount of bottled water from our wastewater resource center, in part to show in 50 years, the two, whether one of them still exists. Maybe in 50 years, all of the water will be coming from recycled places, but also to show that in 2017, when we look forward 50 years, that the district of Sechelt was in fact at the cutting edge of innovation and in fact processing sewage waste, even if it's not used for potable water and is simply redispersed into the ecosystem and into Georgia Strait. We're doing exactly the right thing for wastewater. We're turning it into a non-contaminated resource that can be freely and with good conscience plowed back into the sea. And there's nobody else on the Georgia Strait who's dumping secondary sewage in there that can say that. So that is actually one suggestion that's sort of on the table, but if there's others, and Councillor Lutz, I think today in passing you mentioned the banners, our street banners.
Our anniversary one.
Oh, our anniversary, our 30th anniversary banner. I was thinking when you said banners, it was the children's banners, but I wasn't sure which child we'd take that away from and say, come back in 50 years and you can get your banner. So our 30th anniversary banner is a good idea. I don't know, any other suggestions, Councillor Inkster?
So I was going to jokingly say you should put one of your hats in there, you know?
Do you know my hats were all stolen when my car was stolen in Vancouver?
Oh,
No, they were dispersed really quickly down wherever people disperse stolen. So, and
okay.
I've been shopping, but I didn't get enough time at UBCM to get to the best hat shop in Vancouver, but I will before it rains anymore.
Maybe Stevie Yates might have one, so, yeah. So I was thinking of an aerial photo of downtown many, many years ago when people first settled here compared to an aerial photo of now. So it just shows how Sechelt changed from the original days of water access and the initial pioneers with the First Nations and how it's changed to now.
And that wouldn't take much room,
No,
would it?
no,
That's actually
just nicely put
a
in
good
there.
suggestion.
Yeah, yeah. Even some digital copy of some pictures of Sechelt. That's not very large either because we digitized so many things to go in there. And maybe in 50 years or however when they open it, the archives may still be open, hopefully, and they may still have all of those photographs, but we don't know.
Whether they would have the technology to read any digital. I can't read things from 10 years ago on any of the equipment I have, but yes. But
yeah.
Hopefully their platforms are getting more accessible. That's
Yeah.
another good idea. Any other suggestions to staff? And then they can just circulate a couple of these in the next 24 hours, and if councillors can weigh in on pros and cons. Any good suggestions from staff or the community would also be welcome. Was there any other council correspondence that we needed to pull forward for discussion? Most of it was for information, I think. Seeing none, I will look then for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Lutz, Councillor Seekers, all those in favor? None opposed, that's carried. This meeting is adjourned at 8:18. Opportunity for members of the public or the media to ask questions about business that we addressed this evening.